Today, I will be sharing with you the Piccolo Care Kit that is available at Flute Center. I enlisted the help of Alex at the Flute Center to answer all of my questions, including what is in the Piccolo Care Kit, how to use the different products, and when to go to your actual repair shop versus when to use the Piccolo Care Kit. Before I get started, I wanted to remind you of the different perks that I have for you at the Flute Center. When you use my code Gina, you will get free shipping, an extended trial on Flutes and Piccolos, as well as an extended warranty on all instruments. You'll also get 10% off of all sheet music. You will also get 5% off of all flute accessories. Okay, I'm gonna call up Alex and let's get started. Hi Alex, thank you so much for joining me.
Hey Gina, thanks for having me today.
Yeah, of course. So, as you know, today we are going to be talking about the Piccolo Care Kit. When would you say, like, how often should you be using this kit with your piccolo?
Sure. So some of the pieces, like the flute or the piccolo wand and the swab, those are going to be used to swab out your piccolo on a regular basis when you're done practicing, or if you're playing a long gig. It's not a bad idea to swab out your piccolo like midway through, so you don't get, a little water bubbles in the keys, which can happen. There's also cigarette cleaning paper in here for dabbing the keys as well. So those can be used periodically. For oiling, this is something you want to do a little more frequently when you first get a new wooden instrument. And then after it's broken in, after a month or two, usually once a year to every 6 months is a pretty good amount of time to oil. If you live in a more dry environment, then you might want to oil it more. You just kind of have to keep an eye on, if the wood's starting to look dry, especially in like the mouthpiece area where your lips are touching all the time.
So that's what you should be looking for is if the wood is starting to look dry, and that's when you know to actually use it. Is that correct?
Yeah, yeah. And part of like routine maintenance that you would send it into a shop for is we'll oil it for you. So a lot of times we recommend like halfway through or every couple months, you can oil it yourself as well. Both the inside, using the swab we include, you can put a little oil on it and swab the inside, and you'll want to get the outside as well.
Okay, perfect. And then you kind of touched on this, but when would you use the Piccolo Care Kit versus when do you go and bring your piccolo into the shop?
hmm So for most instruments, piccolo, flute, really anything, we recommend a clean oil and adjust service once a year, really, if you're playing regularly, because that'll take care of a lot of things beyond just the wood of the instrument. That's going to make sure the mechanism feels good, the tarnish kind of stays away, the pads are sealing correctly. So the care kit is really for that maintenance in between big services, so you can keep the piccolo in the best shape possible yourself beyond what a technician could do for you during a COA.
Yeah, that makes sense. Why don't we move on to the Piccolo Care Kit and see what it comes with and start off with that?
Sure. So first, it comes with a little brochure here that kind of it walks you through all the components, which is great. And it actually talks a lot about the things I just spoke about and goes into a little more detail. But you start with, I have in our bag here, the bore oil. So this is going to be the oil you use to oil the piccolo. And this is just a bore oil. It's great for piccolos. Clarinetists will know this as something that they also use to oil their clarinets. And then we also have this swab here. It's like a drop cloth with a small weight on it, so it's easy to pull through the piccolo. This is probably best for swabbing out the inside after you've been playing for a while and after you've oiled it, because in our instructions, we actually recommend using a flute wand or a piccolo wand like this, dabbing few drops of the oil on this wand here, and then using that to swab the inside. Let it sit for a few minutes, and then use the other swab to pull it through to pick up any excess oil. So that piccolo wand from Roy comes with this, which is great. Then we also have in here the Roy cleaning papers. This is what you want to use to clean your pads. And we talk about it in the manual here, but when you are doing this, just make sure you're dabbing the pads on this paper. And when you remove the paper, make sure the key is open and you're not pulling the paper out while the key is closed, because that can damage the pads, which is important. Then we've got here a little stick of cork grease. This helps keep the cork moisturized and not getting too dry or cracking, and it'll prolong the life of your cork on the tenon of your piccolo. It'll also make it easier to get the head joint on and off on a regular basis. And then the last thing is a polishing cloth here. This is great for just keeping the keys clean, keeping them from getting tarnished too fast. Tarnish is going to happen, but if you wipe it down and put your piccolo away at the end of every practice or gig, it will slow down that process. You can also use this to, when you're oiling, to use it to oil the piccolo. Maybe use one end for a little oil and then use the other to wipe off any excess.
Okay, perfect.
That's all the components, yeah.
Fantastic. One question that I had is some of the things that it comes with, it seems like they could be used for a wooden head joint for a flute as well. Would you agree with that?
Exactly, yeah. So some of these things, the oil in particular, can be used on a wooden flute, a wooden head joint, and the same principles apply for those instruments too. When you first buy one, a head joint or a flute, it's good to break that in. Each manufacturer has their own recommendations, but like I mentioned before, you want to limit the playtime to about 30 minutes a day for about a month, and oil it a little more frequently when you first get it, and then after that, every 6 months to a year is enough.
Okay, perfect. Well, why don't we look at how to actually use the care kit with the piccolo?
Absolutely. All right, so one of the first things it talks about in here is oiling it. So let's get this guy out of here. All right, so this is the Roy wand. These are great too, just to show you. They unscrew, and so you can have it in two pieces, and then it nicely fits in your piccolo case, which is great. And they have a nice grippy handle. All right. So what you'll do is you'll take this oil here and you're going to just apply a few drops to the wand. Just like 3 or 4 drops there. And then actually have some piccolos in here with me. You'll go through the inside and swab it through. And this is long enough. The nice thing, it's long enough to get all the way to the top of the piccolo while it's still assembled, which is great. So you can do a quick swab as well during a gig if you need it with this swab, as well as use it to oil. So that is great. So you'll go all the way to the top and just keep twisting to make sure you're getting all the way around. All right. And then ideally, let it sit for a couple minutes. And then once that oil, what the wood can absorb, it will absorb. And then you'll use this other cloth to swab it out. So that's the one I mentioned earlier that has the little weight on the end. And you'll use that to drop it through and pull it through the piccolo to get the excess out. All right, so it's got a little weight at the end, so it comes out the bottom, and then you can just pull it through gently. And I like to be extra thorough, so I'm going to do it the other direction and go like that. There you go. So ideally, let it sit for a little longer than I did, but then you can go through and swab off any of the extra oil, which is great.
And so with the oil, with the weighted swab, do you use that with the head joint?
That one is hard to do since you can't pull the cork assembly. So with that, I would use like your typical like silk cloth on a metal cleaning rod, or if you happen to have a second one of these, go through it just one more time with that.
Okay,
So that's
perfect.
the only thing I would do with that.
Great. And then would you use it on the outside of the piccolo, the oil?
Yes, that too. So since this already has some oil on it, you can go ahead and just use it to gently rub oil. Actually, let's see if I can get this. It just a couple
Mm,
drops, like really, like you can see how shiny it gets. You don't need a
mm,
whole lot, but go across the body of the piccolo. The most important thing with the body, at least, is to avoid getting the pads wet with any oil, because that
right.
can really cause some damage to the pads, and then you may have to get them replaced, which can be a little bit costly. So just
Right.
avoid getting the pads uh, soaked with oil. And we actually do this regularly here at the Flute Center. About once a week or so, we go through all our new inventory and make sure it stays nice and oiled.
Great.
Yeah, there you go. Then
Awesome.
other components, we've got our cork grease. So we'll give this. So cork grease, the important thing with this, a little bit goes a long way. So this should last you quite a long time. So I just dab a little bit, just gently across it, the cork, and then I'll use my fingers to kind of massage it in a little bit and just give it a little bit there. And you really just need a little bit. So that little cork grease stick should last you quite a while.
Yeah, and I think most flute players are they know how to use the for the pads the paper, right? So
Yeah.
I don't think we have to go through that, but yeah, just to reiterate what he just said about that is to not pull through, because I know at least for me when I was younger, that's how I thought you always cleaned your pads, is you just pulled the paper through, and yeah, it can rip the pads. And so I think that's a very common mistake that a lot of us flute players have been doing for a long time. So it's great that we have that clarification. Awesome. Well, thank you so much. That was so helpful. Is there anything else that you think people should know about the Piccolo Care Kit, or just other things dealing with taking care of a piccolo in general?
I think we covered most of it. I mean, the only other thing I would add is I mentioned getting your flute. This is a great way to maintain the flute throughout the year. But
Mm.
don't forget that all instruments do need a clean oil and adjust service about once a year. I think it's something a lot of people are surprised has to happen on a regular basis. But remember, it's just like if you own a car or you as a human being, we've got to go to the doctor for a physical. Your car has to go in for oil change. Um, that routine maintenance will save you heartache and a lot of costly repairs if you don't put it off. If you get it done every year, you'll be in a lot better shape. Because I think a lot of the minor leaks that happen, we end up compensating for as players.
Mhm.
So definitely have that COA done because you may not notice it, but they usually start to crop up very slowly, and you start to notice it when it gets really bad. But if you fix it early, it's a much better situation for you.
Perfect. And Flute Center obviously does offer repair services. And you can go in person in New York, and then also this new location in Chicago, which is so cool. And then you can also send it in if you're not in one of those two locations, right?
That's right. Yep. And we've got several technicians at both stores, and you can call us to do appointments, or we have a comprehensive like online booking tool as well. You can pick the day and time that will work on it, which is really great.
Okay, amazing. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking the time out to do this video with me.
Of course, you're welcome. This is great.
Thank you again so much to Alex for helping me out with this video. I learned so much, and now I know how to actually properly take care of my piccolo. So thank you for that. Thank you also to the Flute Center for making this series possible. Make sure that you subscribe to me here on YouTube and follow me on Instagram and TikTok, and I'll see you next time.